who's winning, and who's up shit creek without a paddle. This is your stop for unbiased election projections with BS free talk, analysis, and one cranky politico's insight into the very future of the world you live in. Broadcasting from the gateway to the motherlode in Waterford, California. This is the Election Recon Podcast. And now, he's carpet-bombing partisan zealots back to the Stone Age by delivering cold, hard reality to the fanatics first class. Your host, Army veteran, political operative, and election junkie, Josh Whitfield.
Welcome to the Election Recon Podcast. It is episode number 3 for the Election Recon Podcast. We are so excited to have you here tonight. It is Saturday, October the 10th, 2020, and it is currently 7 p.m. on the west coast of the United States. We are recording from beautiful California here on that west coast. Thank you so much for joining us. As the intro said, I am Josh Whitfield, and I am exhausted. It has been a hell of a week. Hell of a week for me. I am tired, but I am still motivated, committed, and dedicated to bring all of you this, the third full episode of the Election Recon Podcast. And what an episode we have in store for you after an epic week in politics in the United States of America. We have a very special guest joining us tonight, Ashley Stubbs, a former colleague of mine. She is now the communications director for the Tri-City Development Council. It's the regional EDC group out of southeastern Washington State. Very excited to talk to her about things like women in politics today, the state of politics and society today, the election today, and one or two stories. I'll give you a little insight here in our past of this beautiful face made for radio, because of course now this being the second episode that we have filmed for all of you who follow us on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, we want to absolutely thank the support our show has gotten now moving into our third week of being up on the air, I guess we should say, or the internet. Our Twitter has blown up this week. I'm not really quite sure why. I think the Russian bots got us because we have like a tremendous number of Russian accounts. Twitter is the cesspool or the viper pit of the internet, in my opinion. But for those of you following us on Twitter, we certainly do appreciate your support. If you don't follow us on Twitter, we are updating Twitter all the time with relevant information from all sides, all sources about the election. So you can check us out on Twitter at Election Recon. We got Instagram, where I'm told we're up to like 30 followers or something like that. I'm not really well-versed in the Instagram thing, but those of you guys that like Instagram, you can find us there too at Election Recon. Facebook, what I am well-versed in. We're up to 300 followers now and likes on Facebook for our Election Recon page. That is awesome. Thank you for everyone out there giving your support there. We're approaching some 40 subscribers on YouTube, but what was really cool is our full-length episode of the podcast with Matt Austin last week got like 1,500 views or something like that. It just blew up. That was really cool for us. Thank you for those of you who turned in and watched that and gave us your support, gave us your support. We really, really do appreciate it. I think what's the biggest news for us out of the support thing, though, is over 300 unique listeners per day right now for our podcast. We are tremendously thankful, and we got listeners obviously across the United States, but we got some people listening from Canada, from the United Kingdom, from Holland and Belgium and Germany, Sweden, Malaysia, and Taiwan. Picking up those international listeners as well who are interested in the U.S. election. Thank you so much. And we've gotten like 7 or 8 questions that were emailed in this week for the show. We've been putting our email address out, which is electrecon@gmail.com. We're going to answer a couple questions to end the show tonight. So, yeah, some exciting stuff. We're going to talk about the vice presidential debate, Trump having COVID, obviously the state of the race for election 2020 across the United States, the disaster that is the North Carolina Senate race going on right now. We're going to talk about the big two flips in our model this week for president, which is the states of Florida and Arizona. So it's going to be an exciting show. I'm looking forward to it a lot. And those of you who are DMing us or emailing us your feedback on the show, we really do appreciate it. Don't be afraid, man. You're not going to hurt our feelings. We love good, bad, or ugly. We like the feedback. We're trying to continue to be that oasis for you guys of straight talk, no BS, no spin, just straight talk and information and discussion on politics and elections right now in the United States, amongst, I should say, this desert of chaos that is the year 2020 and this insane election. So we hope that that is what we are achieving, because that is what we are trying so hard to be about. So before we bring Ashley in, I'm going to just quickly go over the state of the race. We're going to do that earlier, one segment ahead, because there's not a lot of polling to report today. I'm going to go over the state of the race quickly because I suspect we're going to have a longer conversation with Ashley. You guys wrote back to us that you loved Matt Austin being on the show, that you wanted some more dialogue. You don't want to just listen to me bloviate for an hour, and I certainly understand that. So we're going to push through the state of the race real quick. We're going to report 3 polls, not a lot of polls today, but 3 polls. First, for president, it comes out of the state of Georgia, and it is from PPP, a Democrat-affiliated organization. It has Trump down 46-47, Biden up +1 out of the state of Georgia. That race obviously within the margin of error. Also from Georgia, also from PPP, is a Senate poll out of there. Perdue, the incumbent Republican. The Democrat challenger is Ossoff. Ossoff, the Democrat, +1, 44-43. That race within the margin of error. And out of West Virginia for governor from Metro News, Justice, the Republican, Salgano, the Democrat, Justice +19, 53-34 in that race. That's all the polling we have for you today. So we're going to go ahead and take a look now at the state of the race. First, for the presidency of the United States. And we're going to take a look, as we always do, at the 538 presidential forecast. 538.com, Nate Silver and his model has Donald Trump down again for the umpteenth consecutive day in a row, and President Trump down in that model to just 14 in 100 chance of winning re-election, otherwise 14%. Joe Biden up 85 in 100, or 85% chance to win the election. 538 projects it 344 electoral votes for Biden, 194 for Trump. Their forecast for the popular vote is 53.4% for Trump, 53.4% for Biden, 45.3% for Trump. Taking a look now at the Real Clear Politics average of polling, aggregate polling of battleground states, from 2016 to 2020, where Donald Trump has continued to do better all week. Starting the week off around 0.1%. Trump today now at 0.8% better today than he was in 2016 in the battleground state polls, in the aggregate collection of polls from RCP. So that is a piece of good news, roughly 1% better for President Trump in the battleground polls compared to how he was doing in 2016. In our model here at Election Recon, we've had no shifts. We didn't put any data or run any simulations today. So no updates from yesterday. The race still stands 308 for Biden, 230 for Trump in our forecast for electoral votes. Our model has it 31 in 100 chance to win for Trump, or 31%, 68 in 100 for Joe Biden to win. We have it 1 in 100 chance of a 269 tie. And of course, as we said in earlier videos, in the event of a 269 tie, it would go to the House of Representatives to choose the next president of the United States. But it's important to remember, it's not raw numbers where the Democrats obviously have the majority in the House. It's by delegation of those who get sent to the House from each state. So California, which has 50 plus members of Congress as the most populous state in the country, versus Wyoming, which has 1 member of Congress as the least populous state in the country, each get 1 vote each to break a 269 electoral vote tie. So in the congressional delegation tiebreaker for the House, conventional wisdom says Republicans by congressional delegation would have the advantage in re-electing Donald Trump in the event of a 269 tie. Let's just hope it doesn't come to that crazy nonsense and someone just wins outright for the sake of the country. That being said, we have the popular vote forecasted at 51.1% for Joe Biden, 46.7% for Donald Trump. Moving now to the Senate. Again, we're going to have no changes, so I'm just going to push straight through as quickly as possible here. Our Senate standings still stand at 50 projected seats for Democrats, 50 projected seats for Republicans. For the House of Representatives, 239 projected seats for Democrats, 196 projected seats for Republicans. For governor's mansions across the country, 27 projected mansions in control of the Democrats, 23 for Republicans. For state legislatures across the country, upper chambers or Nebraska's unicameral chamber, we have 29 upper chambers projected to be in control of Republicans, 21 projected to be in control of the Democrats. In state legislative lower chambers, 27 chambers projected to be in control of the Republicans, 22 projected to be in control of the Democrats. And that is the state of the race as our model sees it as of Saturday, October 10th, 2020. But as I always say, a day is a lifetime in American politics, as this week has shown, and a week is an eternity. So stay tuned, because this race isn't decided by any means yet. Any means yet. So we're going to go ahead and go to the phones now. We're going to go to the phones to talk to my good friend Ashley Stubbs, who I am very excited is calling in. Once again, Ashley and I worked with each other for Meridian Pacific way back in the day. Meridian Pacific, a national political consulting and public affairs firm here in the United States. Ashley and I worked together there. Today, Ashley is, again, the communications director for Tri-City Development Council, which is the regional EDC group out of southeastern Washington State. Can't wait to get Ashley's thoughts on all of these things, talk a couple stories about the past. Without further ado, Ashley, thank you so much for joining the program tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Josh. Thank you for having me. Really excited.
Yes, Ashley, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Before we get started, as I mentioned in the previous segment, you and I used to work together at Meridian Pacific before we both went our separate ways. And that you have a history with Girl State and all of that. But, before we get into the politics and all that stuff, go ahead and tell us what's going on in your life and what's going on with you right now.
Man, Josh, you asked for it. That's a lot. Okay, I just have to start off by saying, to Jeff and Lauren, you couldn't have picked a better person to host a podcast, because all of my memories with Josh, and we're going to circle back to this based on what you said, Josh, but honestly, when him and I were colleagues together, and we were on a phone call with, maybe a candidate or something, and for whatever reason, you had to stall. Maybe your computer had to reboot, or you saved the polling numbers in the wrong place. All you had to do was shoot a note to Josh, and I'll tell you what, that guy can talk for as long as you need. He would tell stories about anything, and he would stall and buy time. So I'm just saying, you picked the perfect person for this podcast.
So as my ego was being inflated there by my former battle buddy and colleague Ashley Stubbs, you see how she very subtly just shot the wind, right? Like a balloon deflating was my ego, giving Jeff and Lauren room to breathe here in this room. Adds pretty much, you just basically said that I am a champion bullshitter, which I am, and I proudly take that, put that trophy on my mantle.
That's good. I do have a second part to this, though, which I truly believe, so I've been thinking about it, right, since you asked me to come on the show, and I truly think that our working relationship consisted in large part of 6 words. You could define everything we did in 6 words. And those were copy, track in, stand by, and then make it happen. And honestly, I tell you what, Josh might be able to ramble and go on, but when it comes time to get work done, he is a man of very few words. All you had to say was, hey, I got a problem going on, I need this, track in. And so I'm commending you there, that when it comes time to make something happen, you want Josh on your team.
Yeah, that comes from my other professional resume. And also from our former boss, John Pashong, who's a partner at Meridian Pacific and is world-renowned for his one-letter email, both solicitations and responses.
Outstanding. That was the one-word email that I would get a lot.
Outstanding indeed. John, little tribute there to the one and only JP, man, the John Pashong.
Yeah.
Man, I got so much love for John Pashong, such a mentor to both, I know you and me, taught you and me so much, took care of us in this business, and just a lot of love for John. So here's to you, John. Outstanding indeed.
That is exactly correct. Josh, no, so you asked your question, we worked together at Meridian Pacific in California for a number of years, and then I am originally from Washington State and fell into campaigns and politics by accident. I think most good folks who find themselves in campaigns and politics, the ones that are scrappy, that really know their stuff, usually ended up there by accident. So I found myself in campaigns and politics after I worked for someone who was running for office up here. I had done an internship basically for fun at the state legislature. And in fact, my undergraduate degree is in music. And I took this internship, worked for a woman that I really admired. She decided that she was going to run for Congress. We did that race, and we did not win. And let me tell you what, some of the best lessons I've ever learned in my life come from campaigns where you didn't win. Then John Pashong gave me a call, moved to California, did that for a while. And time came, I wanted to be closer to my family, moved back to Washington State, worked in the state legislature for a while as a public information officer, writing, speeches and press releases for various members of the legislature, and then did some campaign work again during the 2018 cycle, and then gracefully made my exit out of campaigns and politics, and went back to my hometown, started working for the economic development group there, and it's one of those things that you can leave campaigns, but they don't always leave you. And so I'm excited that I get to talk with you, Josh. I don't have too many politicos in my life anymore that I can shoot the shit with, as we would say, right?
Right, exactly. And as I always say, when you work in elections or politics, it's like working for the mafia, the mob. You can try to get out, but they will always find a way to just pull you back in.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna set the stage now before we get into the shit show that is American politics today, because you and I worked in a controversial time for American politics. I think each cycle just keeps getting more and more controversial, but you and I worked in a controversial time back then.
Mm-hmm.
And before you were hired, right? You were hired by Meridian, and how Meridian was structured at the time. You were hired, and then we worked together for a little bit, but you and I hadn't met face to face yet. We had to do a lot of work together in separate locations and talk to each other remotely, but you and I had not met face to face yet. But it was time for us to meet. The two of us that were working together, calling ourselves Team Pashong at that moment in time, of course. But it was time for us to meet, so we ended up with meeting for dinner up in Sacramento, and I found out something about you quickly, because my powers of deductive reasoning are never to be mocked. Just ask my wife. And again, just to set the stage, we were at a very, very nice restaurant, but I think I found out something about you that caught you by surprise. But I hope, I haven't talked to you about it, at least I don't think we talked about it, but just looking back at it, because it was so long ago, I really hope that the outcome of this whole thing that we're about to talk about, I believe, I hope that it really endeared the trust that we ended up having for each other in our professional relationship going forward. So, moving along with this story, we're moving along with dinner, and I think it's okay that I say this, because I don't think this is a secret, but anyway, I kept seeing you glance over my shoulder. And at first I thought it was the newborn baby sitting at one of the tables, because the ladies, you guys love the newborn toddler thing, sweet, type situation. And but then I began to realize I noticed in your eye a look I haven't seen since hanging out with my military buddies in a bar. And I began to notice that you were checking out. You were undoubtedly checking out the very good-looking, the hot, dare I say, lady in the EMT outfit at the next table over.
I don't remember it that way, but you go ahead.
But that's how I remember it. That's really that's really how I remember it. And you were subtle and everything, but I was like, yeah, she's really checking her out. And me being me, I had to ask you. I had to ask. I don't know. You left and you went to the restroom, or maybe you had I think maybe you had to take a phone call or something. But you came back, and we have talked face to face for like a total of 25 minutes in our lives, and you sat back down, and I just said I just had to ask. I said so you're batting for the American League, huh? And you were honest, but I think at first you hesitated because no normal person would expect to be asked that in the first 25 minutes of a professional dinner conversation. But to your credit, you were honest, and I think what you said was, how did you know? Okay, so. You tell your side of it real quick, but I do want to make like this point, like, because in our business, trust is such a rare commodity, especially earning such early trust, and I really do believe this, like your honesty in that moment was like it cemented for me because it was just it was pure. We laughed it off. It was, as awkward as it probably sounds on this podcast. Maybe it was awkward a little bit, but it was you were kosher. The situation was kosher. It was funny, but you were dead honest, and for me, that really cemented trust in our professional relationship for us going forward.
I appreciate that, and I agree. My memory. I don't think I was that obvious. And I guess you'll just say that you're very perceptive, but I just don't quite remember it that way. But
what?
I do agree. I had gotten up to do something, to take a call, or go to the restroom. You're right, and I came back, and you asked me, and it's interesting that you asked me because up until that point, and I will even say now. I have always made a point to, and I'll say, I am not very open about being gay. It's not a secret. It's just something I don't talk about, just because I think it's one of the less fascinating parts of who I am and what I bring to the table. But I will say, and frankly, this is probably the most public I've ever spoken about it. But any time that I'm going to be working with someone really closely, and you're the perfect example, Josh, I would come out to you. I would, absolutely, because if we're going to be in the trenches and we're going to be doing all our work together, especially in politics or campaigns, I think one of the first rules is don't ever let your buddy get caught flat-footed. Don't ever let them have to answer for something that you could have given them the answer to before the situation happened. So I was planning on telling you, and I think I was shocked that
just not 30 minutes into a professional dinner.
No, I mean, I don't know. I can't say for sure. But what I distinctly remember is after I confirmed it, I think you were trying really hard to not have a strong reaction. Like, you weren't really sure if I was going to confirm it. And you were trying to play it cool, but you were like a kid on the inside who was so excited.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, I was excited, and first, I mean, let's stop. I play everything cool. Come on. Let's be real. Come on. Please. I play everything cool. Jokes aside, no, I mean, I think I probably played it off cool, one, because I thought it was cool. I mean, you know me, I wear my emotions on the sleeve, and I really do think that far too many people in this world, in our society, they pay attention to unimportant things about people, like, who they're sleeping with, or just dumb stuff, where what's important to me is, because I'm libertarian at heart, that. So, and we're both, you and I both, we're both very moderate, I would say, politically, probably. What's important to me is especially about a person is integrity, strength of character, work ethic, stuff like that. And I was excited. Probably because you were proving my suspicions that you were unique correct, and I mean it in this way, not necessarily that you were gay, which made you unique, because you generally wouldn't expect somebody to work in Republican politics to be gay, even though I know many gay people who are Republicans. That aside, my point is that you were proving through this dinner and in that situation and how you handled it to be unique. And I like unique things in all things in my life. If you stand out and you're unique, it catches my attention. But what I think is most important is that I knew in that 10 minutes, that sequence of events in 10 minutes, that that we were going to be friends. And I'm very selective about my friends. I don't give that out easily. I mean, I've had many colleagues. I have lots of colleagues, but friends who are colleagues are rare, and that was a special thing. And I think in that moment that, I knew that I had made a new friend, and I thought that was special.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I couldn't agree more. Sure. And, you mentioned that we were both pretty moderate in our beliefs. And I have to tell you, this is one of my favorite stories. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Josh. We have been working together for a few months, and someone had questioned if I was really a Republican. They were a little unsure. And Josh said, no, you got it all wrong. She's a Washington Republican. They grow them different up there.
Yeah, I did say that, yes.
Yeah. And when you told me that story, that's like the highest compliment I've ever received in my life. And I have told other people that now about me so many times to try to define my beliefs. And we can talk about that later. I find myself further and further away from the Republican Party these days. But
I think though that's something that's really been lost in our country, and maybe it's the same internationally too. It's a world problem, but I don't know. I mean, it's all these labels and so tribalistic, and everything is you have to be on this team or no team at all, and all this stuff, and it's really disheartening because I know so many Democrats out there who don't agree with everything about the Democratic Party platform, and I know so many Republicans out there that don't agree with everything in the Republican Party platform, and it's gotten to be this way where it's like if you disagree with just one thing, you're out. You're terrible. You're a leper. You're a disgrace. It's gotten to be so tribalistic.
It's tribalism, yeah.
I can't get on board with this idea that if you don't agree with me 100% of the time, you're out, or you better agree with me 100% of the way to be on my team. It's insanity to me. It's insanity to me, and I just, I think that you're a great example of going against the grain there, and I hope I am too, and I hope that people wake up to the dangers of this tribalistic way the world's going.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, and unfortunately, I feel like more and more the United States is becoming full of single issue voters. They can agree with a candidate on 9 out of 10 things, but that 10th one is the deal breaker. And it's too bad, in my opinion, that that's the case, because I think a lot of good folks have a lot of good things to bring to the table, but they're shut down before they get the chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I go back to the days of Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, that generation. That generation we call the greatest generation in American history. Where that generation was able to elect FDR overwhelmingly 4 times in a row, then give Truman the nod for a second term, and then turn around and gave Eisenhower, from the completely opposite party, an overwhelming nod to run the country. And I asked my great-grandmother from that generation, she just passed away a year ago, but I asked her before she passed away some years back, I go, what was your thinking as a younger voter back then? Like, how did you guys come to that decision? And she said, we used to vote about the character of the man. And of course, there's only been a man in the presidency. I believe there will be a woman president someday, of course, but I think what she said there was profound, that they voted for the character of the person they trusted to run the country, and not a party or this ideology that we're so caught up in now. And, we call them the greatest generation in the history of our country, and yet we've come so far from their worldview today.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think you and I could go down this rabbit hole for days. I don't want to take us so far off course, but you're exactly right. And your great-grandmother was a pretty smart woman. fine.
Well, first, Ashley, let's be real clear. There's no course on this show. There's no one at the helm navigating this ship, okay? It's just going. It's just drifting aimlessly into nowhere. But this is a good point to transition. Let's since you and I parted ways, I started coaching high school girls basketball, and it's probably the single greatest favorite thing that I do in my life. And I tell these young ladies that I have the privilege of coaching, you are living in probably the most profound, epic times to be a young woman. Everywhere you look, the graduation rates in college, the amount of women that are taking leadership positions in the Western world, women are out graduating men by profound numbers. Women exponentially every single election are outvoting men. There are now more women in government than any time in history. And I tell them, don't allow excuses ever to stand in your way of grasping that brass ring at the top of the mountain, because you can go climb it, you can get it, and it's yours to take. I truly believe that. And just in your career in politics and government, I mean, how far have women come from? I mean, that's my outsider's view as a man at this situation. But in your opinion, how far have women come in politics in America?
Man, I mean, you said it, and it's just unreal to think of how far we've come, and yet how far we still have to go. Because I think you're exactly right. We are seeing women, we're seeing them turn out to vote in record numbers. We're seeing them graduate, like you said. We're seeing them be elected in record numbers. And there are still so few women in the House of Representatives. I mean, there's 435 seats. And I don't think even half of those are women. I forget the statistic, but there's still a long ways to go. And, unfortunately, I think that that banner cry for women's rights and progressive ideas, it seems to be the cry of the left, and they really like to think that they're forward thinking. The truth of the matter is there are just as many competent, articulate, trailblazing women on the right. And I fear that gets lost in the message. And I don't like it when they tear each other down and they make this a partisan thing, because I think any woman at the table is the right way to go.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that brings me back to something amazing RGB once said. And she once said something years ago where something along the lines of, women should be sitting at the table wherever decisions are being made in this country. And she's absolutely right. What she didn't say is liberal women should be sitting at the table wherever decisions are being made in this country. And RGB, who I believe to be the most epic liberal mind legally in our entire, in a generation, I don't think there's any argument about that. I think she always is self-conscious about what she said, and she always meant to say exactly what she meant to say. And she didn't qualify the statement by saying just liberal women who agree with me should be at the table. And I think she meant that. She meant all women should be at the table, regardless of their belief system or ideology. And I think that's very important, because I think every time the women's movement takes a step forward, the tribalistic nature, like we've talked about already in this show, within the women's movement, hurts themselves. If a liberal woman does something outstanding, it gets cut down by people who disagree on the right. Or if an amazing woman on the right does something outstanding, it gets cut down for ideological reasons by people on the left sometimes. And I think that's just harmful to the women's movement in general. It would be harmful to any movement. And I think it's fair to say that there are probably, amongst women in the nation, the majority are probably liberal. But there are millions of conservative women in this country, and we should never squash the minority voice in this country ever. This country is founded on protecting the minority voice wherever it exists in our society and politics.
No, absolutely. And I mean, giving the minority a voice is as American as it gets, frankly, in my opinion. And you're exactly right. You know, the other side of that, though, is just it's the types of it's the things about women that you elevate that sometimes make me wonder if we're making the right steps forward. And what I think of is Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rodgers. She was the chair of the House Republican Conference for a number of years, and she is the only woman in Congress to give birth 3 times while serving. And I mean, it's amazing. That's unthinkable. And, you know, she used to say, she would say that, and then she would go, only in politics is that, you know, something worth merit, something that I have to mention as credible. You know, which is just, man, isn't that true? Where there are millions of working women out there every day, but that is trailblazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, and it's sad, really.
Yes, that's right. You know, and then you have folks like Tammy Duckworth. Man, gosh, I mean, I'd love to hear your take on Tammy Duckworth, but she also just recently became the first woman in the Senate to give birth.
Yeah. Well, you have absolutely set me up to piss off a ton of people on the right here. So listen here, you right-wingers. Buckle up nice and tight, because I'm going to throw some truth at you. And it is this. Despite the fact that politically and ideologically the senator and I disagree on a great many things. We agree on some, but we disagree politically on a great many things, the senator and I. It disgusts me, those people out there that attack the senator's service to this nation to score political points. Because you disagree with the senator politically or ideologically, you attack her service to the nation, and as somebody who wore the uniform, as somebody who was wounded in combat for the nation, just like she was, it infuriates me to see people attack the senator's service. The senator, Miss Tammy Duckworth, is an American hero, point blank. She put on the uniform, fought for the nation, and was catastrophically wounded in service of the nation. If you think Congressman Crenshaw from Texas is an American hero, and he is, a one-eyed Navy SEAL wounded in combat, then Senator Duckworth, by the same standard, is an American hero. Politically, you can attack her politically. You can attack her ideologically. If you run for office and you become a political leader in this nation, you open yourself up to attacks on policy, on ideas in the court of public opinion, and I am okay with that. But for everyone out there who attacks the senator's service because you disagree with her politically or ideologically, it disgusts me on the highest level. As a fellow combat wounded veteran, the senator is an American hero, whether you agree with her or not, and that's how I feel about Senator Duckworth. Let me go ahead and get off my soapbox.
No, it's a good soapbox, and you know, and maybe I didn't talk about Girl Skate before, and so I'll try to give a quick download on it. But I'm really passionate about this program called Girl Skate. It is a civics camp for high school girls, young women. They can only attend once between their junior and senior years of high school, and it's 7 days long in the middle of the summer. It's an intensive, immersive civics camp, and Girl State, it was founded by the American Legion Auxiliary, and there is a Boy State that was founded by the American Legion. So there is a really, really big emphasis on serving our veterans and service over self. And there is a chapter in every state. So Of course, my background is in Washington State. Washington Girls State was founded in 1946. And so the quick synopsis is that these young girls come to camp. They're assigned to a fictitious political party, and they're assigned to a city. And what I usually say is the city is like your cohort for the whole week. And if you look at the week, like as a whole, between the first day that they arrive and about day 3 or 4, every single girl in the camp will have been elected to some office. So the first night they get there, they elect a city council and a mayor. And then the second day, they go to county conventions and they endorse candidates for a state ticket, and then that afternoon they go to the state convention and they endorse, someone for commissioner of public lands, lieutenant governor, and, then the county races. You file just like you're going to file for office. And by Wednesday, every single girl in Girl State has been elected. We have a full self-governing government, from governor all the way down to city council members. Everybody has a job, and they start to write their own legislation to govern themselves. And let me tell you what, it is a profound, powerful experience, teaching these young women that not only do they have a voice, but their voice can be powerful, and it can be more powerful than their bodies. Because up until that point, the media, it just sexualizes everything. And it's really easy to get sucked in and feel like you can get ahead by dressing, in a provocative way. What I'll say is that I'm always impressed by, it's, somewhere around day 2 or 3, these girls start to realize that they're saying words and people are listening. And the power that comes from supporting each other, and it's a great chance. You get these girls from high schools where there's always a narrative. You come from a high school and you have a label. People see you a certain way. And when you go away to camp and nobody knows you, you get the chance to redefine yourself. And the true colors come out. I mean, if you're kind of a scummy person, you can't hide it for very long. You get put into your place. But the confidence some of these girls have with the opportunity to redefine themselves, it's incredible. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, I mean, I think it's a great soapbox. I think Girls State is a phenomenal program. I think that, it teaches these young women who have aspirations to be young leaders that they can do it. And I think they have a tremendous task in front of them as they step into young leadership roles in their futures, because let's be honest, the country's a disaster right now. It's an absolute disaster. It's a hot mess out there. You and I think we're both, we ideologically proud of our nation. I think, we both love the Constitution and our system of government and the values and idea that of America and what America should aspire to be. And in the state of affairs right now in our society and across our country, I just, these young leaders are going to be looking to people like you. These young women are going to be looking to women who have been there and done it before for guidance and mentorship and so I guess what I'm trying to ask here is look at what's going on in your state in Seattle and Portland and between our states. I can give examples in places across California, but it's divisive. It's heated. What do you think, Ashley? What do you think about the state of American society right now?
Man, and yeah, I do think of myself as a proud American, and unfortunately, I think we're in a time sometimes where I feel a little embarrassed. If I were, someone in another country looking to us, I would not think well of the United States. So I'll start by saying I don't think we're in our best chapter right now. But on one hand, well, how about this? So you and Matt last week were talking about Civil War, right? I think that's super fascinating.
Just real quick, because I got so much feedback, people writing in, people emailing or people telling me that I saw who listened to the program who were like rolling their eyes. Oh, Josh, you're being dramatic I can't believe you shouldn't talk about this Civil War thing. You're being over dramatic. And I'm like, really? Really? There were just militia members arrested by the FBI for trying to kidnap, in a plot to kidnap, the sitting governor of Michigan.
Yes, Gretchen.
I mean, there are people there that were calling me ridiculous. And I just want to be clear. Do I think that we're going to have people like a full-blown civil war in the Hollywood sense, where there's gray coats fighting blue coats all across the nation and all this? I really don't believe that. I said that on the show last week. But do I believe? I mean, that's, literally, these guys had a legitimate plot to kidnap a sitting governor. And let's call them for what they are, domestic terrorists. They are domestic terrorists. That's not how we do things in America. We do not go in and forcibly take and plan to kill duly elected representatives in this country because we disagree with them. If we think that they have too much power, we take them to court. And you know what? Newsflash, the governor's executive authority in Michigan was just shut down this week by the courts. So don't tell me I'm being ridiculous, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's crazy. And I'm not saying that all militia people out there are domestic terrorists. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying these guys were. You know, militias are supposed to be about defensive action. These guys were taking offensive action against someone they just politically disagreed with. It's nuts. So no, I do not believe that there's going to be this Hollywood movie purge civil war thing that happens in the country. But am I afraid? Am I terrified of the fact that there could be 100, 1,000, 10,000 perhaps people who kill or murder each other in this country over politics or election results or ideological disagreements over this election? Yes, I do. I am afraid of that.
Yeah, and frankly, I saw it in my backyard. It was it shook me a little bit to see it in my backyard with CHOP or Chaz, if you were following that. So Capitol Hill, which is a prominent neighborhood in Seattle, spent many a weekend there as a college student that I wish I could remember. And during amid all of these protests, there was this radius of Capitol Hill that declared themselves to be autonomous. And they blocked off the area. They wouldn't let the National Guard in. And it was the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. That was how it was known as Chaz. And it gained all of this national attention. And I think it was an experiment of what could happen. And unfortunately, I think some of the more heartbreaking stories that I heard as a Washingtonian, but that were not elevated, are all the things that went wrong. I mean, as an autonomous zone, you don't get access to things like medical services. You know, people got hurt and injured.
People got raped and murdered there. I mean, I'm going to call a spade a spade. And if I'm going to chastise these criminals who literally plotted to kidnap and murder a sitting governor in the United States, you could be damn sure that I'm going to chastise these anarchists that took over a part of a city and turned it into a literal purge hellhole. And I'm libertarian at heart, but my goodness, there has to be some sense of order against what these pure anarchists want to bring to the table, which is what we saw in this hellhole of a place they called CHOP, which is what you're about to describe.
No, you're exactly right. Well, and where I was going to go with this, on the topic of civil war, because there is a lot of unrest, and it really has become neighbor to neighbor and, frankly, brother to brother. However, I think that there's merit to looking closely at the American Civil War and going back even further, you know, the ideological differences over slavery, that's profound. And I'm really glad that it turned out the way that it did. I think that obviously wasn't the end-all be-all solution. Still a lot of problems to talk about there. But, you know, what people fail to mention when they compare the American Civil War to what's happening today is the first thing that happened is that states seceded. It was the Union versus the Confederacy. And I think it raises a lot of questions in my mind, especially for states like California, where you are, Josh, Oregon, Washington, the left coast, as we like to say. Yeah, it raises a lot of questions if there's going to be any movement to secede. And
well. For the sake of time here, because we're running long. And I promised Lauren and Jeff that I wouldn't talk Civil War in this show today, but you brought it up, not me. So I think I'm absolved of that one. I just look at the state of the country, and I wonder if it's going to be kind of like, if it's going to go both ways, because the country is just so divided. And I believe that this is going to be a close election. I know a lot of the professional prognosticators out there think Biden's got this thing locked up. A lot of the conservative, the social media pro-am prognosticators, for lack of a better term, feel like Trump really has like a 260 electoral vote firewall, and Trump's chances of getting reelected are much higher than the professionals think. And we'll have to wait and see. Our model, it's our model's first time out, so we'll have to see if our model's proven right or wrong by the end of this thing. But yeah, I wonder if it's going to go both ways, because I think if Trump gets reelected, I don't see any way the left is going to accept the results, and I think there's going to be a lot of chaos if Trump wins reelection. And I think it's going to be the exact same way on the right if Trump loses reelection, and some of these like court packing and some of these other progressive things get pushed through. I think there's going to be a lot of conservative states that find this thing unacceptable, and I wonder what they're going to do. And man, only time's going to tell, Ashley, and we just need to buckle up, I think. And I hope and I pray that cooler heads prevail. I really, really do. Because, man, there's so much more going against our country outside of our borders than what's going on inside of it. I really believe that. But that being said, with all of your, to kind of round it up here, to kind of close it off, with all of your experience and knowledge in the business, how do you think the election is going to shake out here in 2020?
I think that there are 24 days between now and the election. And
oh, no. You don't get off the hook. You're a qualified expert. What are your instincts telling you?
My instincts are telling me that I thought my instincts were on brand in 2016. Let me tell you what, there was no night more shocking to me than election night in 2016. And I've had people tell me, well, that's just because you lived in California. That's just because you were part of the mainstream, the establishment. And I don't think any of that's right. I had my pulse on, a lot of parts that were folks that were even Tea Party areas. And 2016 was still a shock to me. So I'm really not trying to get off the hook here by saying there's 24 days. But let me tell you what, everything can change in a day, right? A week ago, the biggest thing we had to talk about was a shouting match that somebody had the audacity to call a debate. And then a few days later, the president is diagnosed with COVID. So anything can happen. I think what folks fail to piece together is the down ballot impact. We're seeing congressional races that could change. Minnesota 7, that's huge. And there are just so many factors that go far beyond the presidency, but the top of the ticket's going to influence everything.
Well, then let me ask it this way then. Do you think this is going to be a landslide like everyone's saying for one way or the other, or do you think this election is going to be close?
I think it will be very close. And I think that it's going to reignite feelings on both sides about the Electoral College.
Well, fair enough. Ashley, thank you so much. We are extraordinarily over time, but it was worth every second of it. There's so many more stories I wanted to get to, like your tenure as a NASCAR pit crew extraordinaire, but we're going to have to we'll have to hold that one for when we invite you back here on the Election Recon podcast. Ashley, I miss you, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight and giving us your unique perspective.
Thanks, Josh.
And once again, that was Ashley Stubbs joining us from the great state of Washington. And as I always do with our guests, I have lit a cigar. The cigar of the night is once again a Rocky Patel sun-grown Special Reserve Maduro. And I enjoy Rocky Patel cigars very much. Maybe next week I will have a different cigar. We'll have to wait and see. That was a longer interview, so we're going to have to cut short some of the other things I wanted to talk about. But I did want to talk a little bit about the two states that flipped in our model and why they flipped. The two big states that flipped in our model this week, Florida, of course, flipped in the favor for Joe Biden in our model. That was largely, again, we told you as the week went on that this catastrophic, devastating national polling for Donald Trump would start shifting our model to the left. And really that's what we're seeing there with Florida flipping. We are watching the voter registrations. That's going to be a part of our data. We haven't yet to put in the early vote numbers for Florida. Those numbers are going to start being put into our model by Lauren on Monday. So it'll be interesting to see. I suspect that we're going to have all kinds of movement in our model Monday as the early vote data for all the states gets put in. For Arizona, that was a state that continues to surprise us. It flipped to Donald Trump. It surprised me when it flipped to Donald Trump in our model. Then there were a few state polls that came out to support our model's decision to flip that state over into Arizona into Donald Trump's favor. And we are going to be watching the early vote there as well. But the voter registration in many of these battleground states and really nationally for Republicans going in the Republicans' favor, and that is having a positive impact for Republican candidates, including President Trump, in our model so far. But the polling has been really devastating for Republican candidates up and down ticket, including the President of the United States, and that is moving our model further to the left. So I'm very anxious to see these early voting numbers get put into our model. I think it's going to have a tremendous impact. It's going to be weighted the heaviest because it's actual votes from no. Now, again, we don't know who voted for who, of course, but we do know, are you registered Republican? Are you registered Democrat? Are you registered declined to state or some other party? We do know if you've casted a vote, and that's public information. So going to be very interesting to see how the early vote is affecting our model and our projections. And I'm very, very excited and anxious to see those first early voting numbers put in Monday into our model. I was going to talk about the North Carolina Senate race. I'm not going to do that tonight in the interest of time, but we will have plenty to talk about with that in weekday updates coming up next week. And of course, I'll probably reserve some time because I don't suspect that drama where Democrat Cal Cunningham has been caught up in a sex scandal, making light of a veteran suicide as well. That race, which was, and the reason I keep bringing it up, despite the fact that I'm really irritated by this guy making fun of veteran suicide, it has profound impact on who controls the Senate, which will have profound impact on courts and decisions and legislation, regardless of who is president of the United States. So professional wisdom right now is that Democrats are on their way to probably capturing the Senate. Our model has it 50-50 right now between Democrats and Republicans. And it has it 50-50 because our model flipped North Carolina from tilt Democrat to tilt Republican because of this scandal. And this scandal could have profound impacts on whether or not the Democrats can capture the Senate or whether Republicans will hold on to it. So we're going to keep watching that race. So again, as we talked about throughout the podcast, it's been a tumultuous week in American elections. The president having COVID, the vice presidential debate, all that will have profound effects, but I don't believe the VP debate is going to move the needle much. It makes for a lot of good news stories and whatnot, but I don't believe the VP debate is really going to move the needle in favor or against anybody. Most VP debates in history of the United States do not. And quite frankly, I'm not sure any of the debates are really going to have a profound impact on the election, but they could move the needle just enough to give somebody the presidency in a very close election. The second debate has been canceled by the Commission on Presidential Debates. They canceled that, so if you were looking forward to the second presidential debate, it is gone. It is canceled. The third presidential debate is still on the docket, and we'll just have to cross our fingers, those of us who are geeks and nerds and are looking forward to that. We're going to just have to wait and see if that one goes. So that's kind of the big news in the election cycle. And yeah, I really want to thank Ashley for being on the show. I thought it was a great show, and I think she covered a lot of the stuff that I would have otherwise talked about here in the conclusion of our show. Again, I want to point out, because I got a lot of feedback, I got a lot of commentary from folks that I was talking too much about civil war or civil unrest, but I'm very passionate about it, not civil war. Again, I don't believe we're going to have a true civil war in the country. But I really want to push back on this attitude that we need to be killing each other, or we need to bring violence against each other to solve our problems. I just do not believe in that for a second, and I don't believe that's the America that I put on a uniform for, or that's the America that we ought to be. This nation is a shining beacon for freedom and democracy in the world, guys. And we have got to be better than bringing violence to solve our problems. And we have to accept the stroke of the pen, whether or not we win or we lose. Oftentimes in democracy, we lose, and we have to accept the results if we lose. And we need to win with grace if the preferred candidates or people or party that we have win. We have to start putting the country back together at some point. And I truly believe in that. But we promised that we were going to answer some questions, so I'm going to finish the show tonight by answering some of the questions that you guys have written in. Fear not. We're going to go ahead and answer 3 questions that have been picked by producer Jeff. The first one is from Valerie, and she writes in from Canada, an international question. And Valerie writes, what do you mean by Democrat organization or Republican organization when you are talking about polling and your daily updates? Valerie, thanks for that question. What I mean by that is that polling firm or organization has an affiliation, is a client of either Democratic Party or candidates or Republican Party candidates. So generally speaking, we're talking about Change Research, which is affiliated with Democrat or left or liberal organizations who pay them to do polling and whatnot. PPP is another example of a Democrat organization that we use. Doesn't mean the poll is bad. I know a lot of Republicans out there probably roll their eyes. Oh, it's biased. You're using biased polling. We use what is nationally generally accepted credible polling agencies, and both Change Research Polling and PPP is generally accepted as a polling agency, and they do accredited polls. Whether you believe in the polling or not, we're going to use them. We want to bring you all the information. We promise to be the oasis of reality. No BS, no attacking to one side or the other, that we're going to bring the data as we get it. On the Republican side, you'll hear me say a Republican organization a lot, from Trafalgar Group, which is a polling agency or firm that is often hired by Republican clients, and that's why they get the Republican designation. So if you go to realclearpolitics.com, you'll see the D or the R if you look at their polling report there at the end of their names, and that's for the same reason why. That's the reason why we do it. We just want to bring you all the facts and the information. So if they are a partisan polling company, we want to let you know that it is a partisan poll. Doesn't mean the poll's wrong or it's bad. We're just giving you the facts. Thanks for writing in, Valerie from Canada. We certainly do appreciate your support and listenership to our show. The next question, I should say, I'm very tired, comes from Chris. Chris writes from Scotland. We have a very international questionnaire today. Questions coming in. This one's kind of long, so I'm going to read through it real quick, and it goes, as a keen observer of American politics, I have noted that this year may be the most divisive election the States has seen in many years. As a Scotsman, I can't help but notice parallels between our own divisive election or referendum in 2014 and the current U.S. election. The positive legacy for Scotland was a huge increase in political engagement, more people than ever joining a political party, and a complete reversal of polling numbers for the losing side, which is still the case even today, 6 years later. So my question is this: with tensions running high and political opinions firmly entrenched, what do you think, if any, will be the positive effects from this year's election on the country as a whole? Or do you think, as some do, that the U.S. will have some dark days ahead? Thanks in advance. Thanks, Chris, for writing that question in. Kind of a complicated question. The answer is I don't know. Do I think that this is going to be a record turnout election? I suspect that it will be a record turnout election. The early voting data, too early to draw conclusions, but so far, by the amount of ballots requested, it would suggest subjectively that this is going to be a record turnout election. I think many people are engaged right now in the political process, even if they are disenfranchised from it because of all the negativity in our country. I think engagement is a very positive thing. I hope that it is a positive thing. I think that turnout needs to be high in elections, especially in a democratic society. But I worry about our democratic republic here in the United States if we can't accept the results. The difference, I would say, between now and what happened in the referendum for independence in Scotland in 2014 is the losing side accepted a tough result, that being the independence side. The stay side won that election. And, instead of throwing a fit or temper tantrums or not accepting the results, your countrymen on the losing side appeared, at least from our view across the pond, my view at least, to accept the results, pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and re-engage the populace on why they thought that was a bad decision. And maybe in the future you'll get the opportunity to vote again on this subject, and maybe the results will be different. But that's how it works, and that's been my continual message here over the last 3 weeks this show has been up, is that we have to follow your example over there in Scotland, which is we have to let these controversial, passionate, emotional decisions be decided at the ballot box and not with violence in the streets. And I hope that is indeed the legacy. I hope that my cause for alarm and my concern at the end of election 2020 is unfounded. I hope that Americans take a deep breath after 4 years of just insanity, regardless of the results, and say, you know what, my side won, great, or my side lost, and I got to dust myself off and go convince people of why it was a bad decision, and maybe reverse the decision 2 or 4 years later as we have national elections here in the United States. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Chris, for writing in from Scotland. Our last question comes from Rena from the state of Arizona here in the United States. And she asks, how can your model have Trump up in Arizona, but McSally losing by so much? Great question. I really did want to get more into our model. I keep doing that, but I keep going so long with our guests that I don't get deep into the model. I'm going to make it a point to go deep into our model next Saturday. So we're going to keep the special guests shorter, and we're going to talk a lot about our model next Saturday to explain some of these things. I think that'll be a better time for it because the early voting data will be put into the model. But in short, it's because there are states in the country, Rena, that don't go up or down in the ticket so much. You see this in Mountain West states like Montana. Montana is a great example of a state that splits ticket. They may go Republican often with the presidency, but they currently have one sitting Democrat senator and an outgoing, termed out Democrat governor in a statewide election where they elected a Republican president. So we see that in Arizona too. I think Arizona has a little bit of an independent streak where it could vote for Senator McCain for U.S. Senate, but vote for Barack Obama for president. So I think there is a history of split ticket voting. I think we may be seeing it here. Our model is certainly suggesting that. What hurts McSally in our model specifically is her extreme unpopularity. Her favorability rating is so underwater that our model weights that against her. And we generally see a correlation between unfavorability and votes for candidates. Trump is kind of the exception to that rule. He was very unpopular, unfavorable in the polling in 2016, and yet he was still elected. But he was also running against a very unpopular opponent in Hillary Clinton. Mark Kelly, astronaut and husband of former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, is not unpopular. He is likable. He has good favorability ratings, and we think that that factors in, I guess, on all the data and the trending and the stuff that we know. So that is helping Kelly out in our model. In Arizona, the numbers are just a little different for Trump. So we suspect that there's some a split ticket there, and we suspect that Trump could win Arizona and McSally could lose. Let's not forget that McSally did lose 2 years ago in a statewide election. It was very close, but she still lost. Could McSally win? Could she ride Trump's coattails if Trump ends up winning Arizona? Absolutely. It's very close. We rate it tilt, while a lot of other professional prognosticators out there pretty much have this thing in the bag for Mark Kelly. We do not have it in the bag for Mark Kelly, the Democrat. It's a tilt state, which in our model means a 1.5% difference or less between the candidates in final results. That's where our model is. Now, Mark Kelly's been riding that 1.5% margin, and he's been very close to pushing Arizona into the lean category, which would be 1.6% to 4% in our model. And we'll see with the early voting data if he can get it there. I suspect right now Mark Kelly is ahead, but there's still plenty of time for McSally to turn it around. And we have seen with the court battle that Arizona may be tightening a little bit. It's tough to tell. Our model's certainly going to take a look at that. So that's kind of why we have a split there in our model with Kelly up on the Senate side and Trump up on the presidency side. I want to thank everybody for writing into our show. If you want to write in, please email us at electrecon@gmail.com, electsingularrecon@gmail.com. We appreciate all the support. If you like the show, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to get those YouTube views and subscribes up. We certainly would appreciate it. You can find us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Election Recon, and you can find this podcast on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. I'm Josh Whitfield. I'm a very tired Josh Whitfield, but this has been another exciting show. Thank you for joining me this evening. Good night.